Welcome back to another edition of Music Monday from the podcast Nurture the Mind. I'm your host, Poots, and today we do not have a music reaction. Today we're going to do a conversation, more so. Back in 2020, sorry guys, there's a lot of moving parts that are going on right now in my apartment, so you're just going to have to bear with me. Person that used to live above me, a lot of their stuff is getting moved out right now because unfortunately the person that lived upstairs above me, she developed Alzheimer's or dementia, one of the two. And so over the past however many weekends, her family has been coming here and getting her stuff out of her apartment. So you guys might hear some moving around and whatnot, but we're just gonna roll with it. We're just gonna try and have a good time. So the idea for the video, like I do a lot of music reactions and I love doing music reactions, but I wanted to switch it up, do something a little bit different. I'm always looking for different types of content to put out there, different types of videos. And back in 2020, I believe, no, maybe it was 2021. I'll have to go find the video. But I put out a video talking about my vinyl collection because I've seen those videos on YouTube. I like watching those videos on YouTube. And I was like, let me participate in the trend, you know, especially because I am in the music space myself. It's like, I feel like I should talk about that. I should show you guys what my collection of vinyl looks like. So obviously, you know, we're in 2025 when I put out that first video. 2021, like a lot of things have changed. My vinyl collection has definitely grown. I can't remember all the different types of vinyl that I had back then or how many I had. Like I'd have to go back and watch the video that I put out, but I would say whatever I had back then, I would assume, I think it's safe to assume that I've probably grown my vinyl collection by, like I've probably doubled it, you know, from what you saw in that original video. So we're just gonna go into it. I don't wanna make this video too long. I might do a little bit of an explanation behind each vinyl that I have. I'm not sure, we're just gonna freeball it. We're gonna see what happens. So I got my stack right next to me and normally you guys, you're probably wondering, Cole, where the hell are you at right now? You know, most of the time, doing the music reactions and the podcast and everything like that, you know, I'm in the office and you get to see my entire like music wall behind me with the Mac Miller tapestry of faces and all the posters. I figured we switch it up because I actually got this brand new couch here, this leather couch that I put together on Wednesday of this week when we had a snow day here in Iowa. And so I was like, you know what, let's switch it up. Let's put the shot out here, and then also you can see in the shot, we have my vinyl player. It's a Crossley, it's fucking terrible. I know I need to get a better one. The idea is that when I move out of this apartment, you know, when I start making more money, when my finances are in check, I was going to invest in a better, higher quality record player, but for now that's what I have. It looks like a fucking suitcase that you could grab, pick up, and walk away with, but that's what we have right now. To be honest, I don't play a lot of my vinyl on there because I hate the quality, so I'm just waiting until I get a better record player. But yeah, this is the setting. We got the new couch here. You can't see Miller right now, but he's chilling on the bean bag that I have right here. He's laying in the sun, charging up his batteries, getting his energy in the right place. And you can see some of like the posters that I have out here, the wall art, I guess. And then the little nook over there in the corner. Like I literally, once I put this couch together on Wednesday of this week, I rearranged the living room, a little bit of the kitchen, but not much. And then rearranged a little bit in my office, you know, because I think it's healthy every 4 or 5, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 months that you kind of switch up your environment. You know, sometimes like if you're living in the same place, it can get dull, it can get redundant, but if you can switch it up a little bit, sometimes that can spark the creativity in your mind. So Anyways, yeah, that is the intro. Let's get started and pull up the first vinyl. So number one, we got Wolf by Tyler, the Creator. So here's the inside. Love the graphics, love the detail. Here's the back of it. So I know this album came out in 2013. This is one of my favorite Tyler projects that was ever released, that was ever put out. I think it's some of his best work, but even then, 2013, that seems like a lifetime ago. The man has continued to evolve in his music and in his creative process, because it was like after we got Wolf, then you had Cherry Bomb, then it went Flower Boy, then it went Igor, then it went Call Me If You Get Lost, and then it went to Chromacopia. So this is a very young, immature sounding Tyler, the Creator, but it's still such a good project. I mean, I think why it holds a huge position in my heart is because, in 2013 when it came out, I think I was a sophomore in high school. And so basically what you were listening to back then, those are such, what's the word I'm looking for? Those are very formative years in our lives. And so the things that we were influenced by, that we were listening to around that time, kind of carry out into the things that we listen to in this present day. So this was a massive, influential project for me to listen to. And I've always loved, more than just the music. I say a lot of times on the channel when I'm doing music reactions, I love when an artist just gives you a really cool album artwork. To me, it just drives it home even more. Just adds another element to it. And Tyler has always been really good at that. Like Tyler is the truest sense of an artist, when you try and define that term, because for him, it's much more than the music. He's involved in fashion. He really cares about the album cover and the artwork and the rollout process and the graphics and the visuals and the music videos. He takes the whole package of being an artist seriously and tries to, give that to the consumer, to the listener. And he's just, he's not in my top 5 favorite artists of all time, but he's definitely top 10. And I think when it's all said and done, when this man gets older, when he stops doing music, when he passes away, whatever, I think he's going to go down as one of the greatest to ever do it. Definitely in his genre, but just all across the board in music. Because this man, I mean, I love how every project, it's like he redefines himself and creates a different sound. So that's the first one that we're going to show in the collection. Number 2, you have The Slow Rush by Tame Impala. So this was actually my first exposure to Tame Impala. And what a great album to have your first exposure be to. This album is littered with great tracks from start to finish. So I believe this came out in 2020. I think it was actually February of 2020, so if I'm right, we're sitting at 5 years since this thing has been released. Because I remember it came out before the pandemic hit. The pandemic and coronavirus, COVID, all that stuff hit in America in March of 2020, even though there was some speculation beforehand that it was in China, different countries working its way across the globe. That was happening in February. But yeah, this was my first exposure to Tame Impala, and I was just so impressed by Kevin Parker. To me, again, we have amazing cover art that really intrigues you and is trying to paint a picture. But the music and what he's talking about, I feel like this guy has such a deep philosophy to him and these ideas that he's trying to communicate through music. And that was the thing that really attached me to it, but also it had amazing instrumentals and just really made you think, because that's how I consider myself to be, is a deep person, a deep thinker, a creative person. And so this project right away, when I first started listening to it, just really stimulated my senses and really like drew me in. And I was like, dude, where have I been my entire life, like not listening to Tame Impala, Kevin Parker? And it's crazy because even though I really loved this project, I still haven't gone back and like listened to any of the previous works that he did. This is really the only exposure that I've had to Tame Impala. So if you guys are watching the video and you're like, dude, you are missing out on so much good music, please give me some recommendations for Tame Impala to go back and listen to. I'm sure there's probably not a project that I wouldn't like. I'm sure this man has not had any misses in his music that he's put out. But yeah, so far, because it's the only project I've listened to from Tame Impala, this is my favorite one by far. So now we got Red Hot Chili Peppers, and this one is called Unlimited Love. I believe this is the last album that they put out back in 2022. I think it was April of 2022. To be honest, you know, there's not a lot of songs on this album that really stick out to me. Not saying that it wasn't good or anything like that, but it is really hard as you get older. You know, these guys have been doing this music thing for a long time, a long time. And I do think that limits you in some sense. You know, when you're younger and you're just trying to get started and you're trying to get recognized, like you tend to be a little bit more hungry. I'm not saying that they've lost their hunger, but it's not like this project is not one that I go back and listen to a whole lot. I mean, they had some bangers on here, like Black Summer was one of the lead singles that came off of this album that's really good. Here Ever After is a really good song. What else do we have on here? I don't know. That's what I'm saying, man, is like maybe I need to go back and listen to it again just to get like a better feel for it. But I don't know. There's not a whole lot about this album that stood out to me, but it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers, man. You know, they're just one of the best bands to ever do it. I mean, especially in their genre. I just feel like they were big trendsetters for their time when they were coming up. And I have to thank my father, Fred Poots, because he was the one that got me into the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like growing up, one of the biggest things that my parents were into music-wise was 80s hairball music. So that's what I grew up on. But my dad also loved the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And so that was something that he was playing all the time on repeat. So I would hear it in the car. We'd be playing it at home. You know, I watched all of their music videos growing up. Like, their sound is such a part of my youth, and so I'm inspired by the sounds in their music, and I feel like that's one of the reasons why my music taste is all over the place, is because I had the exposure to 80s hairball, but Red Hot Chili Peppers, and there's a lot of songs that they did where Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer, it sounded like he was beatboxing and rapping, but they were a band, so it was like this weird mixture. And I'm like, maybe that's what kind of made my ears keen on the sound of like listening to rap and hip hop, because that's what I got into later, like when I was in high school. And so my palette was just very large. But another thing that I've said about the Red Hot Chili Peppers on previous videos, probably that last vinyl video that I did, is that this is one of those bands, and I don't know how else to describe this other than to say that it's one of the first groups in music where when I was listening to their songs, it wasn't just about singing along and repeating the lyrics of what they were saying and what they were singing. It was also that their instrumentals were so powerful that I would almost hum it out, if that makes sense. So it's almost like they're sometimes in the song, there's no lyrics, there's no singing, but you have the instruments going. And because they're so recognizable, those patterns, whatever have you, this, that, and the other, I would sing along with the instruments. I would go along with that. If that makes sense. That could be completely like in left field or outer space, but I had never had a band do that to me, where it felt like even if they weren't singing, when I was listening to just the instruments, I could still sing along. Like if it was a guitar, like I'd be mouthing out the sound with my lips. And so Red Hot Chili Peppers, just one of the best bands to ever do it. Not my favorite project of theirs, but that's okay. You're not gonna like everything that you end up hearing. Now we got Mac Miller, and it is Watching Movies with the Sound Off. So, in my opinion, this is one of the most influential albums in my life, across the span of my life. He came out with this album back in 2013, so again, like I was a young buck. This album came out that summer in 2013, and that was one of the only projects that I listened to that summer. Like it was on repeat, in my car. I was driving around with my '06 blue Honda Civic, and I had the blacked out windows, I had the blacked out rims. Like I thought I was fucking hot shit. And it's an interesting project, album, and piece in Mac Miller's catalog, because this is his second studio album. So he's coming off of Blue Slide Park, his freshman debut, if you will, the first album that he ever put out. And it's in between Blue Slide Park and Good AM. And it's also in between Blue Slide Park and Faces, his infamous mixtape that he put out. And so it's a very interesting sound. It's like Mac Miller growing up in front of our eyes. He's this young kid. He's moved out to California. He's starting to get some success with music. And this album is just so introspective, and it kind of starts to lay out some of the struggles that he was experiencing. But it's one of those albums that you put on and you listen to, and there's not a track that you can skip over. Like every time I've ever listened to it, it's like you start with track 1 and you go all the way to track 17, and then there's 2 bonus tracks. So actually, maybe there's actually 3 different bonus tracks. I think there's 16 tracks on the album. There might be 3 bonus ones, so there's 19 in total. Anyways, I've listened to this album so many times. It's such an inspiration for my youth. It was one of the only things that I was listening to when I was in high school and when I got my first car. I remember I was dating my high school sweetheart, Megan, at the time, and I would pick her up a lot in my car, and we drive around and whatnot. And she told me, she's like, "You always fucking play this album. Can you play something different?" I'm like, "No, bitch. It's fucking Mac Miller. Dude, of course I'm gonna listen to him." So it's crazy because I didn't have this on vinyl, and then his family came out with it on vinyl and kind of remastered it. And it came with this massive just box set. Different things in here. I'm not going to pull all of it out, but I was like, even though I have the CD version of this, I bought it when it came out on CD. I'm like, I also have to get it for vinyl, because I don't know how you guys feel about vinyl. Like, obviously you get it, and the purpose is to get a great record player and like play the music in your house, in your apartment. But I'm also thinking long term again, right? Like, you guys see the background that I have in my office and how I've made that entire music wall. I'm thinking about when I get my first house, when I get married to somebody, when I start a family and we have more space, I'm gonna take all of my vinyl records and I am gonna like hang them up and do something really cool with them. So to me, it's so much more than like buying the vinyl and playing the music. Like, I'm gonna make this like an art project or some type of craft work that I'm gonna work on. And so you guys will see that in the future when I get a house or a bigger place. But that's something that I think about when purchasing these, is like, this is really a snapshot in time that I have right here. And it's nice to know that I'm never gonna get rid of it. Like, I'm gonna have this for my entire life, and I'm gonna do something cool with it. So, all right, now we got Danny Brown, Atrocity Exhibition. Not too long ago, I put out a video on the channel, and it was talking about top 50 albums, top 50 of like my favorite albums of all time, and this is one that made the cut, made the list. We don't have to go into it too much because I talked about it probably more on that video. But Danny Brown, like, he's not one of my favorite artists of all time, but he's a very interesting character. And I recommend that if you have not heard this album, especially if you're a fan of rap and hip hop, you should go check this project out, because he did a phenomenal job in this album of detailing what it's like to get wrapped up into drugs, like that whole cycle of being addicted. He takes you through the entire experience, all the highs and the lows and the mentality and the mindset, and thinking that you're never going to get better and then to finally break out of it. It's just one of the more experimental projects that I've ever listened to. And I know it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea, but again, I say it all the time on the channel, I love experimental music. It doesn't always land with me, it doesn't always register right away, but the more and more time that you spend with it, you really learn to appreciate it, because you're like, dude, this is a sound that I've never ever heard before. And like, that's why I get sick and tired of music that's like on the radio, like the pop hits. Like, I understand some of that music is really good, like I'm not taking away from it. I'm just saying a lot of the music that gets played on the radio over and over and over again, it has a certain formula. It has a certain rhythm to follow, and that's why a lot of that music to me just sounds the same. Very generic, very vague, and very watered down. This is not that. This is its own thing. It's hard to compare it to anything else because it is its own thing. And I think that is the essence of being a musician and being an artist, is to create something that is brand new and unique to you. Then you can't compare it to anything else. And I think Danny Brown did a phenomenal job of that on Atrocity Exhibition. Okay, here we go. We have another Tyler, the Creator project. This one is Flower Boy. Came out in 2017. You know, and the big thing about this album is the cover art is beautiful. Look at all those fucking colors. I mean, again, you know, already talked about Tyler, the Creator a moment ago, but he cares about the whole package, the whole rollout process of an album, of a project. But this album for him was important, I think, in his discography, because there's a song on here called Garden Shed, which is one of my favorite Tyler, the Creator songs of all fucking time. And it's basically the song where he admits to being, you know, bisexual. And it's such an emotional track, and it just pulls at your freaking heartstrings, even though, like, that's not me. You know, it's not like I can relate to this song in that aspect, because I'm not bisexual, like I like women. But you could just hear like his struggle, and then him just finally letting go and opening up. Like, it's such a sincere and like transformative moment and like experience on the album. And that was something that, you know, he was debating and wrestling with for a long time. And then he finally just put it out there in his music. And to him, I know that was so freeing to finally just kind of put that thing to bed, open up that conversation and say, yep, this is how I am. Like it or love it, you know, love it or leave it. And, you know, just move the fuck on. So another amazing project. I don't think there's any sleeper tracks that are on this album. I could listen to this one start to finish as well. Okay, then we got Avenged Sevenfold, and the album is self-titled. It's called Avenged Sevenfold. This also made the top 50 albums video that I put out. This is a great band, great songs on here. This is an older project. I want to say this came out in like 2007, but to me, this is one of Avenged Sevenfold's most complete albums that they ever put out. I listened to two of these tracks, Almost Easy and Afterlife, probably when I was in middle school, and then I went back to this album and listened to a lot of other tracks on here when I got older, when I was in high school. I'm telling you guys, like, my music taste is all over the place. It doesn't just fit into rap. It doesn't fit into just hip hop, although those are two of my favorite genres of all time. But this music is so good as well. Like, how would you categorize Avenged Sevenfold? Like, they're rock and roll, a little bit of scream, but they kind of do everything. You know, there's a song on here. It might be my favorite song on the album. It's called Dear God. And it sounds like a country song, but it, again, so good, so emotional, so raw, so real. This is just a phenomenal project. Okay, then we got we got Kendrick Lamar, Good Kid, Mad City. So I believe this was one of the first albums that he ever put out. You know, Kendrick just did the Super Bowl halftime performance for the game with the Chiefs and the Eagles, and everybody was trashing him for his performance. And I don't understand why, because I thought it was marvelous. I thought it was really impressive what he did. Like, he's one of the best rappers, hip hop artists of all time, definitely of his generation. And he arguably in 2024 just had the biggest year of his career because he had the feud with Drake, the rap battle with Drake. Then he put out the song Not Like Us. It won 5 Grammys, and he completely destroyed that rap battle. Completely annihilated Drake. In the Super Bowl halftime performance, he's rapping, which is a very hard thing to do in its own right. It is a skill. I don't think you can argue that. And then he's doing the performance aspect of like the theatrics and the moving around and going to different parts of the stage. Like, if you go back and listen and watch that Super Bowl halftime performance, like, the man is sweating his ass off. Like, he's getting a workout. And I just think people can be so close-minded. Like, a lot of people were like, and it's definitely more so the older generations that say this, but they're like, oh my God, that was terrible. I can't even understand what he's saying. I'm like, you're not even trying to listen and comprehend and understand what he's saying, especially in Not Like Us. If it's true, he's calling out the fact that Drake might be an actual pedophile. Like, those are some serious accusations if they happen to be true. But the man just had one of the biggest years of his career. But, I mean, going through this track list, there are massive songs on this album. Swimming Pools, Drank. That was one of the first Kendrick songs I ever listened to back in high school. You have The Recipe featuring Dr. Dre. You have Mad City featuring MC8. That is a great song. You have Poetic Justice, ironically featuring Drake before they had a rap feud, a rap battle. Money Trees featuring J-Rock. Backstreet Freestyle, Bitch Don't Kill My Vibe. This is such an important album in his discography because this is really where it kind of feels like Kendrick is starting to take off. And going back to the Super Bowl halftime performance is crazy because a lot of people that I talked to about it, what their thoughts were, they were like, who is Kendrick Lamar? I'm like, dude, how do you not know Kendrick? He's been around since like 2010, 2009. I mean, I started listening to him in like 2011, 2012, but he was doing music before that. It was like 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. That's where he started to really become popular. And it's like, dude, he's been doing this for at least 15 years. Like, where have you been? You're saying you're brand new to the party? Anyways, great album. Okay, then we have My Chemical Romance, Welcome to the Black Parade. Great freaking album. I listened to this a lot when, oh my God, how old was I? Probably 8th grade or like freshman year is when I started getting into My Chemical Romance. What's actually really funny is, shout out to my cousin Riley Downey. He was the one that got me into My Chemical Romance. I vaguely remember him telling me, he's like, I don't know if this will be your type of music, your style, or your speed, because My Chemical Romance is one of those bands, especially when they were really popular, they were kind of the spearhead of those bands that fit into the emo scene. the punk scene, stuff like that. Really probably emo more so than punk. And I never dressed like that. I never acted like that. That was like never really my scene. But you listen to their music and it is so good. And that was a powerful genre. That was a powerful time in music because there were a lot of kids. Like I didn't necessarily grow up in that era, but people that are a little bit older than me, I'll be 28 in March, when they were in high school, middle school, like this was the music to listen to. And so it was actually kind of a popular thing to dress as emo or to essentially like kind of go through that phase. And My Chemical Romance is one of those bands that really makes you think of that time, just going through that emo scene. So this is an amazing project. I believe it also made my top 50 list. And they've had great projects since. I think the album that came after Welcome to the Black Parade was Danger Days, which was also a very good album in its own right. All right, guys, we need to start going fast. Okay, Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is the greatest hits, which it's kind of older. So you could probably put on some new stuff that they've released, some different hits, like if they were to do another, like a greatest hits volume 2. Because this came out a long time ago. Like even when I was a kid, my dad had this in CD form. Interesting thing about this vinyl is it's actually the first vinyl that I ever purchased. So when I first got that record player and I was browsing through the store, this was the first piece of vinyl that I ever bought. So this one kind of holds a special place in my heart because it's the first vinyl that I ever had. And obviously, with it being titled Greatest Hits from Red Hot Chili Peppers, there are so many bangers that sit on this album. Okay, then we got Vince Staples. This is Big Fish Theory. I really like the actual vinyl. It's weird how it's in like this plastic or whatever, right? But the vinyl has the cover artwork, like the album artwork on the vinyl. I think that's really cool because you don't always see that with a lot of different vinyls. Vince Staples, another rapper from California, Long Beach area, gangster, thug, that's what he raps about a lot in his music. I just think he is one of the most solid rappers and hip-hop artists that are out there. He is always consistent with all of his projects that he puts out. This is probably, arguably, my favorite album that he ever put out. It came out in 2017, and I think it was that summer. And so I was listening to it a lot, especially when I would lift, like when I would go to the gym and lift, when I was like really starting to get into like weightlifting and stuff like that. This would get me motivated to do my lifts. Yeah, he's just a solid artist. He's just an all-around solid freaking artist. Okay. Then we go to Mac Miller, Swimming, right up there with Watching Movies with the Sound Off, one of the most influential albums in my lifetime. This came out in 2018, and there was a lot that was going on in my life at that time, a lot of things that were shifting. This came out in 2018. It was back in August. I want to say it was released on August 3rd. And then a short month later is when Mac Miller ultimately, unfortunately, passed away. It's haunting when you go back and you listen to this project. A lot of the things that he talked about, he had this like fascination and this obsession with death and ultimately like what did it mean and where do we go after we die, like stuff like that, and then he passes away and you go back and you listen to his music and you're like, God damn it, man. Was this like a call for help? Was this a cry for help? It's kind of hard to not look at it that way or envision it that way because he talked about it so much, right? Like it was this thing that he just obsessed over. But this is an amazing project, and it just sucks as well because you hear the sound on this album last album he puts out, and then we get Circles as like a posthumous album, and then here recently this year we got Balloonerism as a posthumous album. And you're just thinking to yourself, like, if Mac Miller was able to stay alive, like, what was he going to accomplish in his music after something like this? Because this, to me, is straight up mastery of music. So it's like, if he was, making sounds like this, like on Swimming and Circles, Balloonerism, what was he going to create in the future? I think that's the hardest thing that I struggle with now that he's gone. Okay, then we have Doris by Earl Sweatshirt, one of my favorite albums of all time. This is his freshman debut album, and to me it's actually probably one of my favorites that he ever put out. Like, he doesn't sound like he does on this album. How he sounds now, he doesn't sound like that like he did on this album. Earl is such a unique and very creative artist, rapper. He's just a really good lyricist. I think one of the best MCs of all time. A lot of people can't resonate to his music because it's very complex, it's very different, it's very out there. But there's also a lot of people that hold him in high regard, especially his fan base. He's probably, right there with Mac Miller. He's like top two. Like, Mac's number one, and then it goes Earl Sweatshirt. This is probably my favorite project of his. If not this one, it might be some rap songs. I don't know. They're in heavy contention with one another. It's just crazy that some of his best work, I think, personally, was put out on his first project, Doris. And then we got Mac Miller, Macadelic. So this was one of the mixtapes that he put out. In all honesty, I'm going to be completely transparent and real here. I have not listened to this entire project. I know a lot of songs off of it, like Desperado is one of my favorite songs off this project. Loud, I listened to that a lot when it first came out. Thoughts from a Balcony, Aliens, Fighting Robots, Vitamins, Fight the Feeling with Kendrick Lamar, great song, Lucky Ass Bitch, featuring Juicy J. I listened to that all the time when it came out. Ignorant, The Question featuring Lil Wayne, America with Casey Veggies and Joey Badass. But in all honesty, I've not listened to this album, this mixtape, start to finish. Again, after he passed away, his estate, his family, his parents, they started re-releasing these things, remastering mixtapes, putting them out there for everybody to consume. So when this was available, when it came out, I was like, of course I'm going to purchase it. It's going to be part of my collection forever. And it's really interesting because you guys know what the cover art is like. It's not like that on the vinyl. Like, it has all of the, I think it's the females that are on the cover. But on the vinyl, at least, it's just a bunch of ridges, so you can't really make it out. It just looks like one big white freaking glob. Okay, then we got Rodeo by Travis Scott. Another really good project, a really good album. A lot of great tracks that came off of this album. In my opinion, it's one of Travis Scott's best projects. Maybe not my favorite, but one of his best, certainly. I like Astro World probably a lot more. Birds in the Trap, Seeing McKnight. But this is one of those projects that really got him on the map. And you can't argue with this album cover because it's Travis Scott as a wrestling action figure. I just think that's so cool. The appeal to me, because I was always a big fan of WWE, that was a huge part of my childhood. So I imagine Travis Scott was also into that stuff. And I wonder what the inspiration was for him to get the action figure made and then have it ultimately be the cover art for the album. So very interesting, because then you see that as well on the backside, that action figure. Tickets to My Downfall from MGK, when he made the transition from being a rapper and a hip-hop artist, he went over and did rock and roll, pop punk. I mean, this album honestly sounds like a lot of Blink-182 inspiration, and that makes sense because the person that is playing drums on this album and produced most of this album is Travis Barker. So that's kind of where you get that sound from. I think it's a great project. You know, a lot of people criticized Machine Gun Kelly and gave him a lot of shit for taking a leap like that. And I just think that's stupid, man. I think the man did something that was obviously outside of his comfort zone and could have gone one of two ways. And I think it was successful. I think he did a great job with it. So, yeah. Then we go to Brockhampton, Iridescence. What not to say about Brockhampton, one of the best boy bands since One Direction. That was like their one-liner that they used in their music. One of my personal favorites from their discography. It sucks that they broke up as a group. You know, I feel like they could have gone a lot longer and did a lot together, but that's usually the thing that you see happen with a lot of those hip-hop rap groups is, you know, it's very hard to stay together. They had so many people in the group. I think it was like 13 at one point in time, or at least that's kind of how they started this whole thing. It's hard to keep everybody together because eventually you think that those guys are going to go off and start their solo careers. And so it's amazing that we got Saturation 1, 2, 3, then it goes Iridescence, then it goes Ginger, then it goes Roadrunner, and then there was those final two pieces. I think it was called The Family and TM. So they kind of had a long run together, but if you think about it, they started everything back in 2017 and we're in, 2025. So they didn't even make it a decade, not even 10 years. They broke up in 2022. So they only made it like 5 years or so, which is crazy. Then you got Slipknot, We Are Not Your Kind. This is one of the best albums. If you're into heavy metal, I would recommend that you listen to this album when you're trying to get a really good pump, when you're in the gym and you're lifting weights. This was an album that got me through one of my worst breakups. I would literally put this album on, I would go to the gym, I would lift, and I would think about fucking killing people. I know that sounds vulgar. I know that sounds insane. That sounds intense. But in all honesty, I think humans, when we have anger, when we're frustrated, when we're dealing with rage, we try and suppress those feelings and those emotions. You know, you don't want to say a comment like that out loud because it sounds like you're crazy. But if you can use that dark side energy and you can channel it in a better direction, then that's a good way to utilize that energy so it doesn't just stay inside of you and stagnant and can't go anywhere. Like, that's what happens to a lot of people, and I do it myself. I've been going through it here recently. You feel like you have all of these things that are going on in your life and they start to add up and they mount inside of your head and it's building up all this pressure and it has nowhere to go. There's nowhere for that energy to go, and so eventually the levee just gets fucking massive and just breaks, and usually at that point it comes out in ways where you don't want it to come out, and so you have to find whatever the fuck it is. I'm not recommending that everybody go lift and exercise, like if that's not your thing, if you don't enjoy that. I'm just saying, like, you have to find an outlet where you can get rid of or like deal with some of these emotions, otherwise they just sit there. So why not explore them with some music that makes you really tap into that side, that primal nature that we all have within us. Okay, and here is Rage Against the Machine. What is this album called? I don't actually know. I don't even know if it says on here. I'm not entirely sure what this one is, because, I got this one as a gift, once again, from my cousin Riley Downey. For my birthday, I think it was back in 2021, he has such a big vinyl collection that he's like, what should I get for Cole? And so this is a project that I actually have not listened to. Probably the only song that I know off of this project is Killing in the Name. Like, who doesn't know that song? That's such a popular song for this group. Very interesting cover art because I believe it's whoever that guy was back in the day that lit himself on fire and he was protesting and he was like trying to make a point. But thank you, Riley, for gifting me this. I still haven't listened to this entire thing. Okay, then we have A Day to Remember You're Welcome. This is the last project that they put out back in 2021. Not my favorite project by A Day to Remember, but I still have so much love and respect for this band. They are definitely in my top 5. A big part of me growing up in high school was listening to these guys. And although this is not my favorite album, you know, I still think that A Day to Remember, for the most part, they don't really miss on most of the things that they release. I just like a lot of their older stuff because to me, it feels like that's some of the music where they were more emotionally charged up. I mean, there's some heavy songs on here like Last Chance to Dance, Bad Friend, another song that you could bump in the gym. But they've just gone a different direction as they've gotten older. You know, I just think they've really changed up their sound, and a lot of people are mad about that, saying like, oh, like you guys don't have the edge that you used to have when you were younger. And it's like, well, how could you ever really expect that? Because they're older now, they're dads, like they have families, like of course they've calmed down a lot. So yeah, not my favorite project from A Day to Remember, but still a solid project. You know, I like a lot of the tracks that are on there. Then we got more Earl Sweatshirt. This is Feet of Clay. This is a very short project. I believe you only have 9 songs on here, but the runtime is not very long. This is an odd project. It's hard. Again, it kind of follows the same thematics of some rap songs, which was very like depressing and very dark and very much beneath the surface and very experimental. And, you know, Earl Sweatshirt has just continued to go in that direction. I still respect like a lot of the cuts that are off of this album, but you definitely have to have like an open mind to listen to his music because it's different. It's out there, but I like it. I appreciate it. I respect it. Then we got Reborn, right? Is that what it's called? No, it's Kids See Ghosts by Kid Cudi and Kanye West. Again, another very short album with 7 tracks. It doesn't go for very long, but anytime you see Kanye and Kid Cudi work together, they have just an undeniable amount of chemistry with one another. The reason I said Reborn is because that's my favorite song off of this album. It is such a spiritual experience if you go and listen. Okay, then we got some more Kid Cudi. We have Man on the Moon 3, I believe, right? Yeah, Man on the Moon 3, but what's the title after that? I don't know, it doesn't. Oh, there it is. Man on the Moon 3, The Chosen. This came out at the end of 2020, and I remember I saw on Instagram that it was announced on his account that he was dropping it. Man on the Moon 1 and 2 were very iconic projects, especially in his discography. So I think the world of like rap and hip hop lost their fucking minds when they said number 3 was going to come out. And you remember, so this is like at the end of 2020, so it's like December when he announces this, like right around Christmas time. 2020 was a tough year for a lot of people because of the pandemic. And so I remember hearing that this was going to get dropped, and I'm like, dude, this is something that is going to pull all of us together through all of the bullshit that we had to experience in the year of 2020. A very good project. Okay, then you have Denzel Curry and Kenny Beats on Locked. This is a great project, a different sound. Denzel Curry is always spitting fucking bars. Again, a very short album. You're starting to see with a lot of these a continuing theme. I feel like a lot of music is kind of going in that direction as they're putting out projects and albums, but they're not as long. They're shorter in length. They're shorter in duration. It's become more popular in music, especially in rap and hip hop. I see it a lot. I think, you know, that serves a time and a place to be a lot more clear and concise with your music and your message, like hold that brevity, but it's easier to pay attention to because it's not as long, right? So, yeah, definitely a hard-hitting album. when Denzel and Kenny get together, they tend to put out like really good stuff. Okay, guys, we got not many more. Big Sean, Finally Famous. I believe this was the first album that he put out. It was executive produced by Kanye West. Album producer was No ID, which is somebody who Mac Miller has worked with. Great project, one that I was listening to when I was a freshman. Big Sean, another artist that's just really consistent with all of the music that he's ever put out. Another name that I think a lot of people, especially the old heads, don't know about, but he's just as consistent, if not more consistent, than Kanye West. I mean, this guy is a legend in Detroit, right up there with Eminem, that being his hometown, and definitely reps his city very hard. So, a really good project. Again, if you're into rap and hip hop and you haven't heard of this album, go check it out. We got Travis Scott, Utopia. So this is the last album that he put out. That would have been summer of 2023, and this is actually the newest piece of vinyl that I got. I got it this last week when we had that snow day, because I told you guys I've been rearranging everything in the apartment, and I moved all of my vinyl, and so I have a new spot for it in my living room. And I was like, okay, now that I've moved everything, I need to go get another piece to the collection. So there's a lot on this album, so many songs. Honestly, it's, again, one of those albums that I haven't gone back to a whole lot, but you have to respect Travis Scott and everything that he does. I mean, every time that he creates an album, creates music, he builds his own universe in his own world. So you feel like you're stepping into this universe known as Utopia. When he had Astro World, it was the same thing. It's like this entire experience that he brings you through in his music throughout all of his projects. Okay, then we got the last edition of Mac Miller. I just got this recently as well. I probably got it a week before I got Utopia. We have Balloonerism, so it's the Lost album by Mac Miller. Supposedly it was crafted in like 2013, 2014. It was made right in between watching movies with the sound off and Faces. And when you listen to this project, you can hear influences and sounds from watching movies with the sound off, but also Faces. I feel like this was the project that he was testing these sounds out on, and eventually brought him to Faces. But because he was like, I think he was started under the record label of Warner Records, I don't think they really understood the sound or like saw the vision. And so it was hard to put it out as a project and like try and make money off of it, because it's experimental, it's psychedelic. But that's the beautiful thing about Mac Miller, is like, if you look at this guy from afar and you've never really listened to his music or know him as an artist, you probably think, oh, he's just a frat rapper. Like, that's the only thing that he can do. Like, no, he can play instruments. He can play piano. He can produce his own beats. He does production on his songs. Like, the guy is so multifaceted and so talented as an artist. And this is just another indication of where his talent sits, because this project is just all over the place. It has so many unique sounds in it. All right, last one. Here we go. We have Amine, and it is, I think it's a mixtape called 2.5. A lot of colors on this album. Amine, one of my favorite artists, probably in my top 10. Didn't start getting into him until a little bit later. I was first exposed to him in 2017. And then I really got into him in like 2020, 2021. What he has done in between all of his albums is he always puts out a mixtape. And so that's the kind of the reasoning behind it being called 2.5, because it's halfway between his second album and his third album. So his third album has not been released just yet. And he has another mixtape that's called 1.5 because it's in between his first album and his second album. So I just think that's a creative way to spin it with your mixtapes. But very, very short mixtape, but just, oh my God, so many good songs on here. Charmander is probably my favorite. Van Gogh is a good one. Neo is a good one. This one came out at the end of 2021, and I listened to it for a very long time. Haven't gone back to it in a while, but again, great album artwork, all of that stuff. So anyways, guys, that is my vinyl collection right here. Look at that freaking stack. We should probably go through and count how much I have. I'm gonna do that real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27. 27 pieces of vinyl. We'll have to go back and look at that first video and see how much I had and how much the vinyl collection has grown since then. Sorry if this video seems kind of chaotic and cluttered and all over the place. I don't have any script. It's kind of hard when you're going through an entire compilation like that, because I'm trying to talk about every single album, but I'm like, God, it's gonna take too long. So we'll have to cut it down a lot. But guys, that is my vinyl collection where it sits right now. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. 4 things that I ask that you do, especially if you're new to the channel. You don't have to do all 4 things, but please do one of the 4 things. Number 1, subscribe to the channel. Number 2, like the video. Number 3, comment in the comment section below. And 4, share the message via social media or having conversations with other people. The basic premise is, in asking you guys to do that, is if you came over here, if you got value, if you thought it was entertaining, if you enjoyed it, if it wasn't a waste of your time, if I did a good job, gave you good content, good entertainment, please just share the message or help me grow the channel. And those are the 4 main ways that you can, because I just want more and more people to see my shit, man. Like, I put a lot into this, and you know, I want to be compensated for that. I just want to grow the channel. Like, this is one of my dreams, and this is something that I'm trying to make work desperately hard. So if you guys could help me on that front, do me a solid in that regard, I would very much appreciate it and be very grateful. Otherwise, guys, we're going to get out of here. Thank you for coming over and hanging out and having a good time. I will see you on the next video, or if it turns out to be a reaction, we will see. Thank you guys. Love you guys. See you later. Bye-bye.